Hello viewer, you're welcome to our YouTube channel, Namugongo Secondary Vocational School. I request you, before I do anything else, to subscribe or to like our page. So, I'm by the name Mukasa John Braxton Male, a teacher at Namugongo Secondary and Vocational School. I'm happy to meet you. Just feel at home. I'm a teacher of history of South Africa, which is paper 4, and it is examined by UNEM. Today we are going to handle a topic, and this topic is none other than the missionary factor in South Africa. And when we talk about missionaries, you are familiar to this word. But sometimes people are familiar to these words, but when you tell them to define them, they can't even tell you. So we had the missionaries who operated in East Africa. We also had missionaries who operated in South Africa. So our topic today is missionary factor in South Africa. And the objective at the end of the lesson, we expect a student to define the term missionaries, to give the different groups that operated in South Africa. At the same time, we expect a learner to give the areas where these missionary groups operated, and at last, to give some of the prominent leaders who led these missionary groups. Then another objective is that a student will be able to explain the reasons for their coming. Then lastly, a learner should be able to give the problems faced by the missionaries in South Africa. So by definition, the missionaries were the religious people from Europe who came purposely to spread Christianity. And when we talk about Christianity, we are talking about the followers of Jesus Christ. So it means that if Christians are the followers of Jesus Christ, so what they brought was Christianity. They came in different groups, as we said earlier. The first group was the London Missionary Society. That means that they came from London. Then we had the Church Missionary Society. We also had the Paris Evangelical Missionaries. We also had the Dutch Reformed Church. And when we talk about the Dutch Reformed Church, it was brought by the Dutch themselves. Then we also had the Paris Evangelical Missionaries. We also had the Free Church of Scotland. And lastly, we had the Moravian Missionaries. So all those groups operated in South Africa. But as we said, they operated in different regions or areas, and they interacted with different people. For example, the Free Church of Scotland worked or operated in the areas of Natal. Then the Moravian missionaries worked or operated among the Khoikhoi people. You remember the Khoikhois, the second inhabitants in South Africa. Then we had the examples of some of those prominent leaders, of which we had Reverend Dr. John Philip, and he belonged to the London Missionary Society. We also had Dr. Johannes van der Kerk Theodoros, and this gentleman interests me a lot. He was a doctor, at the same time he was a serious preacher, which means that he was a missionary, and it leaves no doubt that he was born in Netherlands. And this gentleman, I remember one time when I was reading, I came across some of his background, and the way how he came to accept Christ is not until when he lost the wife and the child. And it happened during the boat cruise. So from there, he accepted Christ after losing them. But don't forget, he was a serious surgeon. Then we also had Moffat, and we also had George Shield. So those are some of the prominent missionaries who operated in South Africa. As we continue, we'll be talking about those people again and again, the role they played, to mention but a few. Right now, allow me to take you to the reasons which forced these people to march majestically as soldiers of Christ to come to South Africa. And among those reasons, the first reason was to end African enslavement in South Africa. Slavery had become the order of the day, not until the Industrial Revolution in England. But many Africans were enslaved. They used to work as slaves, working under poor pay, poor conditions of work, to mention but a few. So, which they saw that it was inhuman, hence they are coming to put an end to slavery and slave trade. Then, another reason, they wanted to promote African welfare. And when we talk about African welfare, we are talking about their way of living. How they could get good services, good diet, accommodation, to mention but a few. So they had carried all that package to make sure that they improve on the livelihood of the Africans in South Africa. That's the reason why they popped in. Another reason, it was because they wanted to revive evangelism movement. And these were missionary journeys. They wanted to revive the spreading of the word of God from Europe to South Africa, such that they could use even South Africa as a base, and they spread Christianity to other regions in Africa. At the same time, they also wanted to pave way for European colonization. And when we talk about paving way for European colonization, we are saying that really these people thought they were carrying the Bible, but behind there was another motive. They had come to prepare for the coming of their bosses from Europe. That's why, in simple terms, can we call them spies? They had come to see each and everything, prepare people, the way how the mother prepares children at home when he's going to serve food. So they had come to pave way, to prepare, to till the ground and make each and everything workable. Then, later on, their bosses coming. That's why we're saying that that's the reason why they came. They were forerunners of the colonial rule, in brief. They also came because of Dr. David Livingstone's report. First and foremost, Dr. David Livingstone was an explorer, at the same time a doctor. As if that was not enough, he was also a missionary. He was an evangelist who used to spread the word of God. So when he came, he was among the first Europeans who came to spread the word of God and to explore. He saw a lot of things and he wrote a report back home, informing the people whom he left behind what he had seen. So the report motivated these missionaries to come to South Africa. Another reason, there was the need to trade. These people wanted to come and trade and exchange things or goods with other goods found in Africa. So they wanted to come and trade, look for the market, sell their products here, take ours the other side. That's one of the reasons, the trading factor. They also came to South Africa with the idea of supplying arms to the Africans for defense purpose, because they came to realize that they had rudimentary tools, they had rudimentary weapons, so they came with guns. So they wanted to supply guns, that's why they came. That's why you see that some of them worked hand in hand with their friends and fight those who were fighting the Africans. Some were invited by the chiefs. Some chiefs in South Africa who came into contact with the missionaries, they loved them because the missionaries convinced them. And it leaves no doubt that they wanted more missionaries to come. Hence, the coming of the missionaries, which means that they were invited. So they needed to challenge the teachings of the Dutch Reformed Church. What you need to know is that the Dutch Reformed Church's teachings never emphasized brotherhood. They overemphasized their superiority, that God created them first. Then Africans, all the black people, all the colored people were to be servants. So according to these other missionary groups, they did not feel well because they knew God wanted people to love their neighbors as they love themselves. So they came to fight against or to challenge the teachings which were brought by the Dutch Reformed Church. Then they also wanted to stop the influence of Islam in South Africa. They never wanted South Africa to be an Islam state. That's why they had to come. So, another reason why we saw these people traveling using boats, walking on foot, to come to South Africa, they also wanted to promote Western education. What you need to know is that we had our kind of education. You remember fire camps. The elders used to sit with children and the young ones. Then they tell stories around the fire at night. Then they used to move with their children at the workplace. Those were potters, they used to go with their children and they learn how to do the pottery stuff. So their coming was purposely also to promote the Western education. This education of sitting in class, they teach you, then you specialize in something and you do that, creating white-collar jobs to mention but a few office work. Then they were also inspired by the early missionaries' work, like Dr. David Livingstone, whom we talked about. They were motivated by these people who came and preached to the Africans, who were hearing about the word of God for the first time. So it leaves no doubt that they were inspired by those early missionaries who came first. When they went back home, they told them things are possible. Then they also wanted to reduce racial segregation in South Africa. The Dutch people, the Boers, had started to segregate the black people, which was a bad gesture. hence calling for the coming of the missionaries in South Africa. Then they also wanted to ensure equality, that brotherhood, that people created us in his own image, black or white. So they wanted also to come and emphasize that. The discovery of quinine also encouraged them to come, because Africa had become a white man's grave because of malaria. And by then, quinine was discovered. So they moved with quinine or with their medicine. That's why they did not fear to come to South Africa, because whenever they could be bitten by the mosquitoes, they could treat themselves. Then Dr. David Livingstone's work was incomplete. It was not completed. So they came to complete Dr. David Livingstone's work. I told you he was a preacher, he was a doctor, to mention but a few. At the same time, they wanted to encourage Western civilization. And when we talk about Western civilization, the architecture, the culture, to mention but a few. So they wanted to bring their culture here, such that we can move at the same pace with them. They also had the idea of spreading Christianity. They wanted people to know God, accept Him, and receive salvation. Then there was also love for adventure. They wanted to come and explore things which are beyond their European country. So those are some of the reasons of the coming of the missionaries all the way from Europe to come and do that work here. Don't forget to like our YouTube, which is Namugongo Secondary and Vocational School. We love you so much. We'll meet in our next lesson. Thank you so much. May the good Lord bless you abundantly.